Well, hey there. Second, we're just bringing Buddy on here. Okay. All right. Haha, you're upside down. Oh, there we go. Okay. Wait a second. And we're working. Hey, everyone. Can you hear us? Okay. I think that Buddy on. Buddy, I have to admit, this was a beta mode. I'm going to bring you to the center of the screen here. 1 second. Okay. Yes. Okay, it's great. Hey, folks, welcome back to Realities. Buddy and I are always trying new systems here, and there was this interview mode with this streaming software that I'm using, and I tested it last night, and I was able to get everything working. But when we tried it with Buddy, it just simply the distance, Buddy. Oh, it's so yeah, we're getting a lot of buffering here. But how's the? I know it's a little hard on the audio because we're running two platforms at once. I was hopeful that by only running one streaming system at a time, we wouldn't have these buffering issues. But now we're running Skype and this Ecamm Live at the same time, which is two, ins and it's a lot. But how is the buddy? Okay, let's just what it is, folks. It's we're putting a lot through my phone as a modem because it is yeah, I'm still camping, and so I'm still camping, so we're doing this remotely, but we've done this before, Buddy, and it's worked. And yeah, we've got a good. Let me see. It might look better on my side than what's showing on the screen right now, so I'll re-upload this if I'll upload this later if it doesn't look so great on the recording. So people are saying, Buddy, that we should just do it audio, but the thing is, we have some visuals to show today. So hold on a second. Let me see if I can improve this. Okay, people, I don't know, folks. Let's see. People are saying, Buddy, that we should just try it with audio. Um, let me. Um, let me just do one thing in the sound here. We're back, Buddy. Let's just give this a shot. If it just does too much of a disaster, the reason I wanted to use this was because Skype audio in. Okay, go ahead and say something, Buddy.
And welcome back to reality, where we are literally on the edge of perceived knowledge, peering out into the shadowy mysteries that confront us all in existence.
Good. Okay.
Boldly going where few have pondered before.
Okay. Well, it's coming through fine, and let's see. 1 second. Let's see. All right.
Nice.
1 second. I'm just
with us. Some stuff from Joy.
losing some platform bandwidth out of it. Hey. Okay. Right. A little better with hogs. Okay. Okay. Someone wants to be our IT guru.
We need an IT guru so we could just concentrate on
Yeah.
and the mysteries.
So, buddy, why don't we just go ahead, because I can hear you fine,
duty.
and I will upload this again if it's if the recorded version is better, then I can just re-upload it. How about that?
Great, sounds great. Would you like to start with the model stuff, or we can start with the quiz stuff, or
today,
how would you like to?
Let's start with the idea of what we want to talk about. Now, you and I have been talking for a while about fractal reality.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and fractals are the way that nature designs things, right?
Perpetually.
Yeah.
And on so many different scales, which is the nature of fractals.
Yeah. And let's see. So, buddy, when did you get interested in fractals? My background in this started with graduate school. How did you get interested in it? I'm going to add some photos into the meantime.
Sure. And I think it was in college, I saw some early computer graphics that dealt with fractals. And I was really into the new, at the time, was computer graphics. And I saw some of these early fractal models and modeling, and it just made such sense. The second I saw it, I noticed its importance in terms of reality and how we see it all around us, and everything from, rock formations to how, hurricanes are shaped like, galaxies, and in so many different ways. Internally, I could see fractals just all across our universe. And so it just seemed so cool to see it quantified. And, there's so many different types of fractals and fractal structures, and but they all, keep the core fractal qualities, which are reproducing the same shape over different scales.
Right.
And the more you zoom in or zoom out, the shapes repeat.
Right. Now, that's exactly right. And it was discovered by Benoit Mandelbrot, a French mathematician working at IBM. He was working on the issue of line noise. And he found that it wasn't linear at all, that there was a roughness to the signal, and that at smaller scales, you could see the same patterns as at the large scales.
Hmm.
And previous to Mandelbrot, there was, I think, some mathematicians, Fatou and others from France, that had discovered these fractals, buddy. And do you know what they called them?
Oh, I don't remember, but it's something funny.
Monsters.
Monsters, that's right. Yeah, mathematical monsters.
Mathematical monsters. And these mathematical monsters have become very important in our lives. I have on the picture, buddy, this fractal I generated a long time ago with when we were using, just PCs and in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was one of these before Windows, these kind of line by line, when we had just line editors. And this program this is the fractal tree from Opening Minds. And
wow.
Yeah, and so, folks, if you look at that, you can see that it's at any scale you look at it, it's the same thing, but it really does look like what trees look like. You have a trunk, and then it branches, and then smaller branches, and then leaves. And this is how nature creates a lot of surface area in a limited space, right? Because trees need to absorb sun energy, right?
Yeah.
However, yeah, go ahead.
It also seems like it's a way to reproduce successful formulas on different scales. If something is successful shape or a successful mechanism, it repeats on different scales. And I think that, once the universe finds something that works, it can work on different scales. If it's the most efficient shape for especially things like growing and life, but it doesn't have to be strictly for living things. You see that it repeats itself. And it's so cool to see how veins in the body are like neurons, are like trees, are like roots. And not only do they incorporate these mathematical monsters, but they also have Fibonacci and phi incorporated in it. So it really seems like a living math, a math of growth and scale. It's not a stagnant math. It's really an active math. It's not a final solution ever with fractals, it seems like. It always seems like it's in a process.
Right, it's very process-oriented, and it defies our modern statistics. There's no mean, there's no variance. There's none of those quantities that we like to see in statistics that make things normal, right? But it's very robust. And if one branch breaks off a tree, you still have all the other branches, right? So, as you pointed out, nature keeps doing it over and over again because it works. And you can build from the very large from the very small. And then, as you know, buddy, now this is an idea we've been talking about for a long time. And I'll just tell people, there's something called the self-similar cosmological models that believes that fractals exist at the largest scales of galaxies, spiral arms and galactic structures. You find the same mathematical constants. By the way, and we won't go into this too much now, which was a theme of Dirac and Schrodinger and other quantum physicists, right? Nobody knows that they had another side to them, which was looking at these law of large numbers. Even Einstein was looking at it in terms of, are the forces that we see in the universe of light and electricity and magnetism and gravity the sum of all the components in the entire universe? Fractalized. They weren't looking at fractals back then, but they were looking at these large-scale things like the self-similar cosmological model. Yeah, and as Joel says, it's a self-replicated safety mechanism. It's kind of like that. It's the way the universe works. So, there's another aspect to it, buddy, that I think people haven't considered. And then we're going to get into your slides here to bolster that. Is that fractals are also antenna structures.
Yes, wonderful point. A wonderful point that gets into several different aspects. Please continue.
Right, because if you can get a really large amount of area into a finite space, you can resonate at different frequencies.
Oh, this is so important.
And if you look at trees and plants, have you ever considered that it's not just a purely physical phenomena, but their antenna structure with a particular frequency communicating with other similar members of their species? There's been articles in New Scientist recently that trees communicate. They found a pattern of communication from trees. And it's something that I've certainly wondered about for a long time. I forgot what it is, but they found if they did something to one tree in one part of the forest, that the other trees reacted far away.
And it wasn't just in terms of chemicals being released. It was an electrical kind of a signal.
Yeah. Yes. An electrical. And it's interesting. That's right. It was electrical signal. Yes. Yep.
It's interesting when you look at a fractal, you can see how it would make a great antenna. For the larger wavelengths, some of the larger structures would resonate perhaps, and the smaller structures that are kind of identically shaped would resonate for the lower frequencies. So it's really a great broadband kind of antenna. And it's also been used, I believe, to map things that were really difficult to compute mathematically. Like if you look at a map, a continent from above, the more you zoom in, if you're trying to measure a coastline, the more you zoom in and measure little details of the coastline, the more the length kind of increases.
Yeah.
And the more you zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, you can actually come up with staggeringly different numbers for the perimeter of an island shape, a non-traditional shape.
Right.
And fractals have been used to kind of do some mathematical calculations to get more accurate metrics from some of these chaotic systems.
Right.
So fractals is kind of a magnifying glass on our universe as well, and an antenna. It kind of receives and it perceives.
Right. And Kronos here is adding into what you're saying. I'm bringing in some of the comments.
Please, please, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
that fungus look like this, corals. And I think it's safe. It's a safe assumption that nature doesn't waste anything. We're always discovering that nature has so much built in that we didn't understand. So, these structures probably have duplicate functions. Yes, leaves, absorb photons, electrochemical reactions, photosynthesis, all of that, right? But as you're saying, buddy, there's a electrical component too, an electromagnetic component, or a quantum component. That the structure also has antenna-like structures, and that would mean that we're like antennas, like too, folks. That mean we have a certain antenna-like structure, frequency, based on our morphology. I mean, even beards could change your antenna structure. Julie's saying like a crinoid. Saying, yeah.
Wonderful point. And it's interesting too. If we were a fractal, if as a human beings we were a fractal, living in a fractal universe, you would expect, in fact, it would predict that if you looked at the largest scales and the smallest scales perceivable, we would be kind of right in the middle in terms of size ratio. And that is the case in our universe. As we perceive the smaller and smaller subatomic world and the larger and larger superstructures of galaxies and galaxy clusters, we are, numerically kind of right in that middle. And it's wonderful to think about these scales.
It really is. And buddy, I'm telling you, a lot of folks are looking at this now. They're thinking whether science missed something. Fractal antennas are built into your cell phone. That's how they can modulate different frequencies. The antenna structure inside your phone has a fractal appearance.
And that's why you don't need one long cylinder thing that you stretch out like your old TV antennas.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a fractal shape, and it's so much more powerful because of all these repeating scales.
Exactly. So we're already using it in technology. JPEG images that we use on computers are fractalized. They don't reproduce every point in the photograph like some of the image formats we used to use. I even forget their names now. Those really large image formats that used to be really large for our computers to handle. And so they came up with JPEG, which is a compression protocol to sample points and use a fractal algorithm to recreate what should be there, which is why JPEG images don't look exactly like the original image if you look at it under a microscope, but they're sort of similar.
And it's interesting too how when you talk about communication and the fractal being an antenna, if something else is the same fractal size but over the hill kind of and over the horizon, but also has the same fractal size, you would imagine, like in a Mandelbrot set, you will have repeating the exact same shapes, some larger, some smaller, and there will be, internal fractals and external fractals, and you'll find some over the horizon. And you could imagine if there's a fractal shape, like us, let's say, and over the horizon where we can't visually see it or perceive it with our normal senses, over the horizon there's another exact fractal shape, whether that's a universe or a being or a consciousness, that has the same shape and structure and size, we might be able to resonate with it.
Right, exactly. That's a very good point.
And, a lot of phenomena might be directly correlated to this fractal harmonic. Harmonics are well known to transfer energy across barriers that were previously conceived to be barriers. A tuning fork can harmonize with another tuning fork, and they will transfer energy and communicate and create kind of a superposition even. And so there's many ways that we can communicate with each other and see different places and times. I think that has a lot to do with the fractal structure of the universe and this wonderful point that you made about the antenna structure of them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so I'm holding up a book, buddy. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Great.
So this is The Science of Fractal Images.
Cool.
This is a book I used in the early 90s, like prehistory now.
Wow.
before cell phones. The early 90s. Remember when you actually got together with people and you talked, had conversations?
You had to go to the library and there was payphones?
Yep, and we did have computers back then. We had terminals, and we did have IBM PC, little PCs. But this is a book from that era when we had solid books before Kindle and
Wow.
ebooks. Now, this is a book I used for my dissertation because it had all these cool fractals in it. It was written by all these folks, Michael Barnsley and Pekin from Germany and Voss. Mandelbrot wrote this book. Barnsley went on to Georgia Tech, or Georgia Institute for Technology, and he developed JPEGs. He was with that group that developed JPEGs. So these guys were really interested in developing it. And this book made a lot of impression on me because I was looking at this and thinking, hey, this is what reality looks like. It doesn't look like these linear equations I'm learning in my statistics class. It looks like this. And I went to my graduate committee. I said, guys, I want to do a dissertation on this. and
you know what? It's so beautiful.
Yes, this was one of the early books on fractals. And it said, the point was, look how realistic these mathematical images are. Maybe nature works differently than linear math. Hello? Which all sorts of percolation, explosive percolation, and all these topics come out, explosive percolation like viruses, things that multiply come out of this idea. And everyone just said, well, it's pretty, but so what? And I think you can see that, buddy, just like you were saying, and I mentioned this to a scientist the other day, but they didn't quite get what I was saying. Take something like the coronavirus. Maybe it's resonating fractally with other systems like it over the horizon, which is why it can spread so quickly. In other words, before it infects someone, it's resonating with them. It's just my weird idea.
It's not necessarily even weird because, as you progress through time, there's certain things that advance. And it's a 100th monkey effect. It's the effect where why are there pyramids all over the world when they didn't have telephones back then? And, these things happen because of the nature of reality progressing. And, if you want to imagine what a larger superstructure of the universes would look like, we would probably be some sort of fractal within that. So there are probably a greater super realities that we cannot perceive yet, beyond our universe. Maybe that our universe is nested inside of. Right. And the only perceptions that we could have into that now, because our technology can't reach, beyond the Big Bang and before, quote unquote, creation, we can presume that it could be a fractal structure of some kind. If black holes spurn new universes, you have all sorts of different scales of universes. So it's such a cool hint to not only what we understand now, but what we will understand greater and greater in the future. You can be certain fractals will be a part of it.
It's true. And it also means, buddy, that we could be very close to another civilization on the same fractal arm. I know this is something you've thought about a lot. We might not see them because they're just on another part of the arm.
Yeah, and they could be flipped in the inverse side.
They could be right next to us in space. They could. This is how ETs could literally be in the same space we're in right now, but we're not perceiving them. They're just on another arm of the fractal, and so these are really pretty important because they suggest another model that you can pack a lot into the same space. And it doesn't mean that one part of the arm is going to always perceive the other part of the arm. So anyway, so fractals are just really tremendous things, and they look just like leaves and things, and structures.
They're so cool.
And that's fractal math, but it looks just how. So anyway, what the point of this is that our society, I guess from industrialization, where we're so focused on linear measurement, right, and metrics.
Yes.
This is non-metric math. It doesn't have a set fixed length. It's changing. Yes. But our science got so hooked on these uniform metrics, right, that perhaps this is why we don't perceive these other life forms around us, because we tuned it out with our way of thinking, that everything has to fit into one sort of frequency, one measurement system. And I mean, if fractals work for images and they work for satellite communications and probably compressing and decompressing our signals right now, right?
Yep.
You got to expand that, folks, and think, extrapolate. That would mean there are other life forms out there on the fractal curve that maybe you can't see them yet, but they're just around the bend. I mean, you got to kind of have a slightly wider view. So,
and you know what? It's very hard. The hardest thing to believe is that we and our universe would be alone just as it appears to us, especially with our senses being so limited and us perceiving so little of our universe as it is. So you would expect there's more than just this. Even if it's just there's one other, fractal universe like ours that's the same exact shape, and thereby we can resonate with it, or an anti-universe, or whatever. But even then, you really convinced me early on the merits of multiverses. And that really leads back to fractals as well, too. These multiverses could be on all sorts of different scales.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And still, each one could be virtually unlimited. Like the fractal, each one could be fractals inside of fractals inside of fractals. And there's, fractals on the other side of the horizon, or inverted fractals underneath. And when you look at the Mandelbrot set, you could imagine if we were one of those specific shapes, you can see how, over a horizon, there's one that's the exact same size. And, I don't think it is impossible for us to communicate with these other universes or dimensions or, fractal structures. And, once again, in order to communicate with them, we will probably use fractals in some way to do that communication. So it's kind of like a missing link in so many ways that we didn't have as a species, in terms of understanding a lot of things that we previously thought were chaotic.
Right.
They're not chaotic.
Right.
They have a wonderful order of efficiency.
They have their own order to them. They have a dimension. One of the things I studied in my dissertation was fractal dimensions of systems. Even though it could look very rough and disordered, its characteristic, it has a certain characteristic roughness which can be measured. And there's a method to measure and create like clouds of a fractal dimension of 2.2 to 2.3, coastlines, 1.3 to 1.7. You can measure these systems, but it's just another way of thinking about them. And as you're saying, buddy, there's an order there. It's just not the order you might have been expecting if you're working from a very linear mechanistic viewpoint that wants to fit everything inside a box, right?
It's such a really important observation.
You can see this M.C. Escher picture. Remember this one?
I remember that one. That one's awesome. Yes.
Well, this is the same idea. It's self-repetitive all the way out to the edge. And if you could keep going smaller, you'd get more and more. And so you could imagine each of these characters like its own civilization, kind of juncturing with others, and it's all connected to a larger. So anyway, buddy, what you sent some images over. Let's talk about these. I'm going to put I'm going to put the first one up. Yeah. One sec. Here.
Sure, let's do the tree one first.
Okay. So what is this? Says it's green. It's our universe. What is this?
Basically, the thought is, a lot of the phenomena and weird stuff that we perceive seems separate and disassociated. If you look at a tree from above, you will see like a branch over here and a bird over here and a fruit over here, and they all seem separate. But if you look at the tree from the side, you'll see that these individual things that appear to separate from above are actually connected by branches. And those branches lead to hubs, and fewer hubs until they're one trunk, and everything is one. Just like a tree root, just like a blood vessel, and it's very fractal in terms of shape, but it also can explain a lot of things in terms of phenomena. A lot of phenomena may seem very separate. UFOs over here, and ESP over here, and PK over here, and ghosts over here. But when you follow them from the side, from a different perspective, you could see how all information becomes one, and everything is connected. There's the morphogenic fields that people talk about, or the Bohm's implicate order. And these things are going to have a fractal structure to them. And how remote viewing works, something that you and I have tremendous passion about, and how our belief of these abilities and the powers of consciousness interact with the universe is very fascinating. We don't even basically understand consciousness so very much. There's a big debate amongst scientists and philosophers, what came first, matter and energy or consciousness? Matter and energy is required to make consciousness, but matter and energy have no meaning if there's not a consciousness to perceive it. Well, I firmly believe that, of course, it's a tapestry. They're not separate. They're interwoven. And because of that, you have access to the fractal. And you have access to different places and times. And just like that branch, that tree from above, there may be a distant place that I cannot see, and it looks separated. But from the side, in a different dimension that our normal traditional senses cannot perceive, we are actually connected. And even things like, conceivably entanglement work this way, where you have a branch, kind of a structure, and you affect one subatomic particle here, and the information is instantly, faster than the speed of light, transferred over here to this other subatomic particle. And we wonder, how can it travel in the now fast enough to go this way? But maybe it doesn't. Maybe the information travels backwards down the branch to the hub, and because it's going backwards in time, we wouldn't perceive it here, to the point of them being together as one, and then in the now, it instantly changes on the other side. And it goes back again to this branching and this fractal shape, and how there's a connection to everything. And, even a lot of different top physicists now talk about how the universe, every single particle must have a connection somehow to every other particle. And if you rewind the universe, the Big Bang, everything was lesser, there was less and less chaos and more order. And there's certain things about this new dimension that we can't perceive that, is like looking at the tree from the side. These branches in the tree trunk gets fatter and fatter. There is less and less entropy as you go down these branches. And, I just think it's a fascinating way to look at our universe, and it explains a lot of things that we previously couldn't understand. And so it puts a mechanism behind the Valet-Davis model. And the Valet-Davis model about the universe and phenomena basically says that consciousness plays this tremendous role, and they don't go much farther than that in terms of phenomena and UFOs and a lot of these abilities. But what we're saying in this model is that they're right, that consciousness does play a role, but it's actually a real physical role in this fractal universe, and we're able to resonate with those other structures that are on the same scales. So I think that our universe is, a fractal, interactive multiverse, really. But the world we live in is just the universe. So when we look at our universe, there may be ways to communicate across distances, travel across distances, move instantaneously, and do these things that seem like magic to us now. But it's really based on a substructure that we just cannot perceive at this, fractal size. It could be over the horizon. It could be inverted. So this, model is just a slight extension of the Valet-Davis model. And what it could portend is incredible abilities of the mind that we never previously considered. We know there's evidence of psychokinesis, the ability to physically affect reality. There's been so many experiments that have been done. But if you want to even go to a safer place, instead of physically affecting it, just getting data from different times and places. There's been such evidence, and you and I, we are very passionate about remote viewing, and we've seen how it does things that cannot be explained any other way. We are getting information from this field. We're getting information from this fractal universe. Somehow, whether this is the right explanation or not, it seems like it fits. But it also portends a lot of really cool possibilities for the future.
Yeah.
So, it's not only just that this field exists, and I think Valet and Davis, Eric Davis and Jacques Vallée, when they did their model trying to explain phenomena and UFOs, they didn't come right out and say it 100%. But Vallée has spoken about it before, and great minds like Terence McKenna and many others have said that some of these phenomena that are seen, physical phenomena, might just be creations of the mind. And there's some pretty dramatic effects that have been well documented. Ted Owen's ability to cast lightning bolts, Ingo Swann's amazing ability to see different times and places and even affect subatomic detectors. And even the amazing, stunning implications of the Hutchinson effect, where Hutchinson was literally able to shape and change physical matter. And if that is really true, which it seems so many different science groups have examined his material and the work, and top scientists, Hathaway, and so many others have examined his, even the metallic samples that he transmuted from one element to another. This is really some heavy-duty stuff with some major implications, but it explains slide 9 of the Chris Mellon leak, based on 15 years of research from the military's top UFO cases. It all came back to these incredible powers, essentially, of consciousness. And that slide 9 shows that the military studied this very well, studied how it affected people, how UFOs and phenomena, the same stuff that happens at Skinwalker Ranch and haunted houses, and UFOs share so many unusual similarities. So this is at least a direction to explore. It doesn't necessarily have to be how the universe is structured, but I certainly believe the universe is pointing that direction. And what Vallée and Davis don't completely come right out and say, but is basically implicit in their conjecture about our universe, is that consciousness might be physically creating some of these UFOs. Now, that doesn't mean UFOs don't exist. It may actually mean that if UFOs do exist and advanced civilization does exist, they would know about this field and utilize these powers as well on a much higher level. Not everyone is a Hutchinson. So I know this is a very complex, kind of a weird, scary thought, but I think collectively we do shape our reality.
So here's the issue that this all brings up. But I mean, it's a lot of issues. We could obviously be here for a conference for the rest of the day talking about all these points. I put up slide 9, by the way, on the screen here.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you did. Thank you.
Yep. The weapons, cognitive human interface, penetration of solid surfaces. So on one end, people see UFO in a very nutsy, boltsy way, military implications, disabling thermonuclear weapons, missiles at, weapon sites, weapon storage areas.
Seen on radar coming in out of the atmosphere.
And but the other end, there's a consciousness aspect too, which we can't deny. And Jacques Vallée, when I talked with him at one of the IRVA conferences, we went outside. I wanted to ask him about it. I said, so you don't think these are necessarily extraterrestrial? Because this was about 15 years ago. I just went right up to him. And I said, and he goes, no, he said, this is what they're not telling you, is that all these people in these documentaries have had psychic experiences before the encounter happened, or afterwards they have the psychic sort of residue left over from the experience.
Yes, it follows them home. Yeah.
So, but then again, I'm not sure if the Hutchinson effect is effect of his consciousness, or is it the equipment that he's using?
Well, after a tremendous amount of study, a lot of people looked at this, and no one looked at it more than Hathaway, who is an indisputable genius, and he worked with a lot of great minds. And he ultimately entitled his book, I think it was Mind Bender or something like that. He came to the conclusion at the end, and even when spoken to, Hutchinson very coyly, he couldn't come right out and say, "Hey, I'm shaping this stuff I'm shaping reality with my mind." It could be the machines that he utilized. Yes, they used frequency, and I'm not ruling out that possibility. But the machines could have acted like a magic feather, a kind of a excuse for him to access deeper and deeper abilities. And that, Skinwalker Ranch could be the same kind of effect where, because there's a reputation of it being a paranormal place, it gives your subconscious a pass, a magic feather, a ticket,
a frequency
to unlock those deeper aspects of reality. And I don't, this conjecture may imply that UFOs don't exist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this phenomena is a universal phenomena, and if we can access it, this formula would predict that UFOs, or an advanced civilization, a more advanced civilization than us, would also be able to utilize it. Well, so I think the phenomena is very complex, very dynamic. I think there's real UFOs, and there could be some stuff created.
No, it's very big. Now, our friend Ingo Swann, his explanation for this, buddy, was not that it's a... Well, he came from it from the point of view of this matrix. You took my intermediate class. Remember we talked about the matrix a little bit, and there's the matrix page where you go across the column. So Ingo imagined this implicate order, a matrix, a David Bohmian matrix, where everything's connected to everything else. And by the way, folks, physicists are actually studying this. I read an article by Sabine Hosenfelder, who's on the internet a lot with her physics stuff. You could look at her channel. She's a German physicist, and she had this really harsh criticism of quantum mechanics because it's a black box, and they say don't try to figure out why it works, it's just math. And she said maybe there are hidden variables in the form of superdeterminism, that everything's connected to everything else, which would produce the same result as quantum mechanics. Only really that every particle is connected to every particle, every wave's connected to every wave. It's like a giant fractal, and that would... And we should seriously look at that superdeterminism, which is sort of in the direction of the many interacting worlds multiverse model that I looked at. But it's interesting that physicists are sort of saying this. Well, Ingo imagined that too in terms of this matrix. So the thing is it a function of this superstructure, this fractal superstructure? Does that create consciousness? Is consciousness pre-exist? I mean, these are questions we can't answer, but we should consider it, because when people talk about consciousness, they immediately think, well, it's my awareness, it's my brain, or it's my awareness. And as, Ingo pointed out, and Tor Nordstranders, the user illusion, our consciousness, what we're conscious of, mentally every moment, is a millionth of a percent of what's in our awareness. And so Nordstranders argued that we're mostly unconscious, and what Ingo was saying is that we learn RV to regain our natural consciousness, which is to be omniscient. That's our natural state. That's why that's why he yelled at me in his apartment and said, "It's not weird, it's normal." Right?
I love that.
That omniscience is normal. We've just been dumbed down. The fractal got fractally flattened, which is what I call it, fractal flattening. That, in other words, we're all recovering from like thousands of years of abuse to our awareness to be conditioned not to have it. I don't know from whom. I'm not going to... That's a big story. But I think what we're saying here, buddy, is there's a bigger story. There's a bigger story here.
And you know what? When you're an individual, you're kind of separated from that oneness. And so, like you were saying, you're kind of adjusting to this no longer part of the oneness of the universe. One of the things that the implications of Ingo's psychokinetic work, the ability to affect machines and subatomic stuff and physically affect matter at a distance, that made me believe that somehow he was physically connecting. Some part of him, whether consciousness or whatever, was connecting to a different time and place. And so a lump of him was in this reality, but a little bit of him somewhere and crossed through the fractal substructure to another location and came back up into our reality and was able to touch a spot. And so that made me realize, well, when he passed, that lump was gone from here, but maybe now he was more every place else. So he was back to the implicate order, back into the oneness, back, into the morphogenic field. And that seems to be, so many people are saying the same thing, but with different words. The implicate order and the morphogenic field, Rupert's, Sheldrake's, it seems so much the same thing. The monad, the Lyman, you can call it, we're grabbing the tail of a tiger here, Doc, and we're not afraid afraid to make some conjectures, because in order to make progress, you have to make conjectures.
No, we have to do this. We have to do this. Because physics right now is at a standstill. It's just not going anywhere because nobody will ask the hard questions, and it's basically, I've had conversations with physicists, and it's pretty much shut up and calculate. They always say, well, there's nothing left to explain. Yeah, how about slide 9 that I got on the screen here? Instantaneous sensor disassembly. I bet our Congress people and senators were flipping out when they realized there's beings on the planet that can do this, right?
Advanced species that can... I've been able to affect machines and material objects at a distance. Yeah. And I've been able to prove it again and again. And I think everybody can.
Well, there's a feeling, buddy, that we all used to be telepathic and psychokinetic like you're describing right now. And that it was sort of drilled out of us, engineered out of us. Maybe the extraterrestrials that came here, you know, modified the Sasquatch or something, and that's what, you know, they kind of took these abilities away, these transdimensional abilities. I don't know. It's a bigger story. But I think what I wanted to say about 15 minutes ago in response to this is part of the ET issue and the UFO issue, right? It's not just the technology. It's not just somebody has a technology, potential of a threat, adversaries getting it before we do. There's this distinct possibility we're part of a bigger family that we didn't realize we were a part of, right? And that changes everything.
Everything. It would be so naive to, as many scientists and astrobiologists have said, it would be the height of ignorance to believe we're the only intelligent creatures just in our galaxy.
Yeah.
And there's trillions of galaxies. There's unquestionably other life forms. And this universe seems built for life. We have suns that are energy sources and habitat planets. And basically everything else is just cool phenomena associated with that. It's like our universe was made for life. And,
yes.
Existence is an incredible thing.
And we just had that Russian announcement on September 15th that, about the fossils being found in meteorites.
Yep.
I rewatched one of Richard Hoover's recent lectures since I met him in 2013, which is online. And I think I tweeted it. And he talks about all of these, not all meteorites are carbonaceous. But he said all the carbonaceous ones, you find these diatoms and these different bacteria, cyanobacteria, all these different types of bacteria that you find on Earth. That wherever they came from, there's... Because let me just finish with this. I asked him, I said, Richard, when we were talking at the Open Minds UFO conference in 2013 outside of Scottsdale, I said, does that mean that life is just, it's everywhere? If you find it on these meteorites? He goes, yeah, it's everywhere. Everywhere you have carbon, you have life. At least our type of life, yeah.
Think about it. I'm sure people have seen that picture of Enceladus, which is an ice-covered moon with a humongous ocean underneath it. And when they passed by with one of these craft, they could see these incredible plumes of water spraying out miles and miles, and you can into just space. And you can imagine if the sea under that ice had life forms in it, even if just very basic life forms, they are being sprayed out literally into the universe. So we're going to find life forms, not only, of course, on planets, we can find them on asteroids, we can find them in just general space. And I think that's what we're going to discover, that our universe is blooming with life. And you know what? Life is an incredibly complex aspect of entropy. If you want to make something incredibly entropic, that's life. This universe seems very chaotic, but order emerges out of chaos. And that's what fractals teach us. That's what our universe teaches us. And, I think as time passes and human beings, we wrap our brains around these very intense concepts, they're going to start making more and more sense. The evidence is going to pile up to a point where we have to leave these little safety bubbles.
Yeah. No,
We
go ahead.
grow up thinking we have mastery of our universe.
And
We
and
tell kids this is how this works and that
and
works.
that's where the fractals come into this. Is they didn't make people feel safe. They're hard to understand. You look at them and they keep going in different directions. They don't fit the linear Aristotelian logic that we were taught.
They're monsters. They're
They're
monsters.
monsters, and this is what the war has always been against fractals and chaos. The whole history of Western civilization was attempting to make things linear, like Roman roads. Absolutely, you know, those Roman roads in Europe, in England,
Yes,
they're
yes.
absolutely straight. You know, they would just go over mountains under straight. You know, this linearization has costs, and it one of the costs of linearization is it limits your ability to understand things. And after centuries of thinking this way, we're afraid of topics that don't easily conform to a linear type of analysis. So
Great point.
Benoit Mandelbrot, Nassim Taleb, you know, the Black Swan guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading his book now, you know, about fat tails, the science of that, about how things don't fit into a normal distribution. Fat tails meaning the distribution is much thicker at the ends than it doesn't just taper off. Phenomena in those tails. So what this means is that once you embrace that, you're not as afraid of the phenomena that are characterized by those fractal patterns, which, by the way, includes electrical signals and prices of things in the economy and all sorts of phenomena that are not linear. That's why Nassim Taleb calls it fooled by randomness. Is you're always attempting to extract a mean. You see this in science all the time, especially in my field, social science, where people try to extract a mean and a variance, and it's not there. Now, that segues into our second picture here. It's a picture of a black background with this white drawing on it, and there's all these different types of craft, buddy. Tell us what this is.
Well, it's just a conjecture, and there's a lot of conjectures within it that are proven, you know, seemingly accurate by, you know, UFO history. But it states a kind of a fractal thought, and that is that as structures, even UFOs, change in shape or in size order, there are different implications of that. So there are motherships. We've heard many stories of gigantic UFOs that have very good case evidence for. The Guernsey one that was flying over Guernsey, it was gigantic, you know, cigar thing with a line down the center, and the pilot saw it, and the passengers came out and were looking at it. And oftentimes throughout UFO history, you'll see a very interesting phenomena, that a UFO will oftentimes have at least two little escorts or two little drones. And it kind of follows a Fibonacci order. You might conject, and you couldn't be accused of being foolish for this conjecture. Well, maybe. That large ships have smaller ships, and those smaller ships have smaller ships. And as you get closer to the surface of the Earth, you would have more specialized ships, but each ship would have smaller ships. And from the Belgian UFO that had two little, you know, a red and a blue orb that would fly around, to a case that we might get into in the quiz, there are so many cases of UFOs having a kind of fractal little buddies and a substructure. And oftentimes, they're even the same exact form, just smaller. Of course, I think real craft would vary depending on their use, just like our cars vary. You know, we have police cars and fire trucks and, you know, all sorts of different vehicles based on the need. And if someone was visiting us in advanced civilization, you might expect that they would have different types of craft as well too. And that might explain the variance, one aspect of the variance of types of UFOs we've perceived over time. So that's just a little simple kind of a model that has some interesting implications. One of the implications is that as you get closer to the surface of the Earth, there would be more and more smaller and smaller craft, and they would require a greater and greater need for invisibility. So there's some really cool evidence for small UFOs. There's this famous case in Japan where a boy found a small little UFO, like the size of, I think, like a football, and it like crashed in his garden. And he picked it up and he, took it back home, and it escaped.
It escaped.
And then I think his family saw it again, like a week later. It had several appearances. Yes, it escaped, and it had several appearances of this little craft, and it's been drawn and all that stuff. And there's on my channel, there's a video of these type of orbs that are the size of like a beach ball, and in some ways they almost remind me of the UFOs spoken about by some jet fighters on the East Coast that were circular but had like a square shape on the inside.
Yeah.
And you see one of these flying super fast between people on a beach off in the distance. And the same exact orb is in another sighting and in another sighting. The same exact one around the same exact dimensions. So it's just interesting to ponder if we are being visited, like I believe, by advanced civilizations, aside from any creations our mind makes, that these craft and these vehicles might follow some fractal order that we might be able to predict. And we could make some conjectures that are at least worthy of explanation in the least. Because we are at reality's edge with a lot of these topics. UFOs, consciousness, and all that stuff. We have to make conjectures about the shadowy forms and shapes that we see in the distance. And we shouldn't be scared of them. We understand so little of our universe. We have such a tiny ability to see in the visual spectrum. And in terms of the matter in the universe, we know we only understand, 6% or something of it. So, I think our viewers already are this kind of person anyway. They are breaking that safety shell and looking beyond.
They're digging the broadcast. They were getting great comments, buddy. And people love this drawing.
And we love you guys.
Yeah.
Wow, we've been kicking.
Well, we're almost at the end. Let's do our quiz. And I just want to say, the very interesting points, we're going to have to just bring this up another time. I mean, our conversation here is like a fractal. It can go in many different directions. But the main point is that for each of us, buddy, is none of us are alone. We're all part of a bigger fractal. You may not be able to see it, but you're part of it. And,
yes,
you're just like all the microbiome and the cells in your body are part of a bigger body. We're all part of a bigger structure. And I think, the values is how can you serve the structure in a positive way every day with what you do? That's this is what I think when I get up every day is how can you make it better for the whole thing? The whole thing, right? I mean, I think it has values. This is not just science talk. This has to do with realizing you're connected to everything. And every action, everything you do affects everything else. So how do you want to affect it?
Yes. And your thoughts affect it even. And you're connected. You're never alone. You're always connected to the universe and everything. And your thoughts matter. So don't put negativity out there. Don't imprint that into the universe. Try and teach yourself positivity even in the darkest moments.
Yeah, it's very challenging, isn't it, buddy? But that's our challenge every day is not to repeat the negativity. Don't just amplify it. It's so easy with the media we have now, social media. You see this every day on Twitter. It comes to your account. It comes to your friends' accounts, your YouTube channel. And the thing is, this is a whole nother conversation, isn't it? You can respond, but don't amplify the negativity because negativity likes to amplify itself. Negativity has its own universe, its own fractal, but we don't have to go there. When I study Tai Chi and everything, it's always about neutralizing negative energy to turn it into positive. So you don't have to repeat it. You can transmute it. You can transmute it into something else. That's what I believe.
Yes. And when I talk with people about people who have negative entity stuff or depression, don't make a nest for it. Because if you make a nest for something, it will come and roost.
Yes.
So try to make it repellent to negativity. Make a nest for happiness, and happiness will come and roost.
Exactly, buddy. Exactly. Negativity can't stand that, can it? It can't stand that positivity. It's trying to get you to be like it. And don't buy into it. I mean, we got a national leadership right now that's into that sort of thing. Don't buy into it. We're better than that. Okay.
Doc, maybe we should save the quiz for next episode because there's 10 questions, and we could even do a prize too where I could do a reading or remote viewing for it because it seems like it may take a while to go through.
We've just been through
10.
I agree. We've been through an hour. We started late, but we're at 10, we're almost quarter past the hour. That's about an hour, and that's about all we can do for today. But let's pick up. We'll just pick this up on the next broadcast, and we will work. Buddy and I are going to work the technical details out here so that you can see him too. We're gonna. I'll have to work on it a little bit. We'll figure it out. We've made a lot of progress since the early days when I held the phone up to the camera.
Oh my gosh, big progress. And it wouldn't be possible without you, Doc, because I couldn't do this stuff. I don't understand how to broadcast live. It's a great difficulty. But we, make a promise to our viewers. First of all, we're so appreciative of you guys, but we're going to try to improve not only, of course, as people and with our abilities, but in terms of our broadcasts as well. And we have a really cool, fun quiz for you for next episode.
Yeah,
and we'll have a special prize for some of the top placed winners. So don't cheat and Google.
Okay, so
don't be Googling.
We're going to have a quiz next time for you, and buddy, I'm going to be quizzing you about the Einstein-Dickey cosmological constant model. So,
I better study.
and Dirac's law of large numbers.
No, not Dirac.
All right. So, thanks a lot for watching, folks. We appreciate having you here. This is Doc and Buddy from Reality's Edge.
We love you guys.
Someone's asking if we can do it at another time central. Okay. Well, listen, we'll be doing this at different times. It's a fractal show. We don't always do it at the same time. It's on purpose. This is not going to be scheduled at the same time ever. Exactly. If that's okay with you, buddy. Right. It's fractal. I mean, we do it earlier. We can do it later. Remember in the past, buddy, we did some very late.
Yes.
We'll just see every time we get in contact, we just sort of work out a time. So it could be at any time. But guys, you can go back and watch it on the replay. YouTube in about an hour from now, we'll have processed this. And you can rewatch it. There's always so much content in here, buddy. I feel like this show, there's no other show that covers topics like this. So I appreciate people watching in, and it's really fun to do it. So thanks a lot, folks. Stay in touch.
We love you.
We love you, and we will talk to you soon. So we're going to go to our outro here, and we will talk to you next time. Where's our outro? Where's our sound theme?
Should I start dancing?
I think so. The show must go on. Wow.
Maybe an adorable image of Miss Sausages sleeping.
We will not have... wait a second here. Why don't we... let's see. Is this it? What was that?
Like a dance club.
That is not our outro. Okay. Well, guys, I guess.
Kazoo.
Okay,
thank you all very much.
Thanks very much, and we will see you on the next episode.